Everyone always talks about how you need a business strategy, but no one ever breaks down what elements are needed to create a good one. That changes today. Alex Brueckmann is a business strategy expert who works with nine-figure and billion-dollar corporations to create clarity about what matters to grow. Let's dive in. You've been able to identify three key elements to what should be included in a winning business strategy. What are those three key identifiers or elements that are like must-haves when someone is trying to design a business strategy?
Yeah, one of the first, and I think that's a great question. One of the first questions we need to answer, what is strategy at all, right? So in the simplest terms, it's your way of reaching a desired outcome. It's not the outcome as such, it's the way how you reach it. And when you think about what it actually is that you need in order to put a strategy into action, you need to know those three elements. The first one is, where do you want to go? It's like hopping into your car. Before you can use your navigation system, you need to know where you want to go. So that's the first thing, and that's what your vision is, the desired future you want to create. The second one is, you need to know how to measure progress. It's not that you hop in your car, start the journey with the end goal in your navigation system, and once you're there, the system tells you, hey, congratulations, you made it. It's the progress on the way that needs to be monitored. When to turn left, when to turn right, when to take a detour, when to maybe stop and refuel. So those different elements are important, and I call them a strategic dashboard, like key performance indicators, just two handful that help you assess more or less at any given moment whether you're making progress toward that vision or not. And the third element of a great strategy is, I call them work streams. There are many different names. Others call them focus areas. It's basically the handful of priorities that you use in order to decide whether to go left and right, whether an idea or an opportunity that comes into your world is actually worth pursuing or not. It's not what you do on a day-to-day basis. It's a framework that you create, knowing where you go, how to measure progress, and how to prioritize, that helps you make the day-to-day decisions. So vision, strategic KPI dashboard, and work streams. Those are the three elements that make up a pretty good a pretty good strategy.
I'd say it sounds like it brings a lot of clarity to the situation rather than being like, I'm just going to keep going and I hope I get to somewhere I enjoy by the time I'm done with this.
A strategy is pretty much the opposite of the hustle culture out there. If you have a strategy, and I love the word that you use, it brings clarity and direction. It empowers you to make decisions rather than hustling in an unfocused way. Just one day, next day, and then there's another opportunity coming away, and you shift your business from A to B just to chasing the money. That is very, very exhausting. Rather than doing that, understanding how you can use a more strategic approach to your business actually helps you make the money you want to make and at the same time enjoy life, rather than working 15, 18 hours a day.
Brings that focus in so it becomes easier to say no to things. And that's also what I want to talk about is the prioritization as well, because I've heard you talk about the difference between FOMO and JOMO, and I've never heard of JOMO before you, so it's very exciting. FOMO being the fear of missing out and JOMO being the joy of missing out. And I do think, and I'm speaking to myself here when I say it, entrepreneurs have a tendency to chase the shiny object. And I'm curious, what criteria do you personally or do you advise your clients to follow in regards to what opportunities to say no to or how to keep the main thing?
Great question. And I think that's the smart thing about having a strategy in place. Once you're clear on your priorities, you can let go of everything else. I'll give you a very simple example. Entrepreneurs, business owners are often completely overworked because they feel they need to do everything. They need to be on social media, and it's not the social media. It's 15 different channels, all of them, and every channel requires you to create a certain type of content for visibility and playing the algorithm. Who has time for that? No one. And that's just social media. And there are all the other things that entrepreneurs and business owners chase. So once you're clear on where you want to go and what your priorities are, that JOMO kicks in. It's like, yeah, whatever. That's the reason I deleted my Facebook and Twitter accounts. I don't need them. They are of no use. They are just a distraction. They make me nuts. So, and this is just a very small example. When it comes to JOMO, for me, the ultimate proof of JOMO is how much time do I spend with my 2.5-year-old? If I'm just hustling day in and day out, chasing the money, I can't enjoy missing out. But because I know that the waking hour that I use for my business is well invested, because I know exactly what matters, I can let go and spend the afternoon with my son if I want to. And that is very, very rewarding. And it's really not something that I invented. It's just something that I use to motivate myself. And for some of my clients, this is really an aha moment. I have this one client in Toronto. When she started working with me, she was full of ideas and energy. She's an amazing individual. It's not that she wouldn't have ideas and wouldn't know what to do. It's just so much that it's impossible to do everything. And if you focus on a few things and implement them right, the outcome is so much more and so much better than just watering down everything and giving everything 50-60% of your attention. You don't get anywhere doing that. And after working with her for 3 months, she sent me an email and said, hey, it's absolutely amazing. I make the same money as before, and now I have so much more spare time to spend with my family. And that was one of the biggest motivators for her to work with me, to figure out how she can sustain her business, but not at the cost of her relationships with the kids and her husband.
That's definitely a big challenge for many entrepreneurs, and I can fall into that category as well. I'm curious. I want to dive into this because I know this is a problem that we all face. What questions are you asking for people to reflect on to be like, okay, actually now I see it. This thing isn't important. This is a time suck. Or is it, using a checklist instead of a to-do list? What are the practicalities?
No, these are tactics. These are just tactics, and I'm not using those. What we do is we really dig into who you are as an entrepreneur. What's motivating you? What is the legacy that you want to create? And I'm not talking about what is the house and the bank account that you want to hand down to the next generation. I'm talking about why are you doing what you do? And people often use terms like purpose or impact to describe what I'm helping you formulate. And I literally have never met a client who has had a clear picture of that. And before you don't know why you do what you do, it is basically impossible for you to allocate time and other resources to that. So that's the starting point. That's where we dig in. And from that, understand what I call your big five. So what are the big 5 moments in your life that you definitely want to see? Is it achieving the 8-figure business, or is it getting married? Is it having kids or traveling the world? Whatever it is, what are these big 5? And we help create that connection between who you are and your desires and the business that you are leading, and how the business helps you achieve those desires. And from those huge dreams, those big 5, we break it down into the next 5 years and reverse engineer what needs to be in place in order to build toward that living legacy that you want to create. And in the end, it's understanding the 5-year frame, the 2-year frame, maybe even the 1 year, the next 12 months, and ruthlessly prioritizing your resources. And resources can be a lot of things. It's the time you spend, it's the money you spend, but it's also the people you surround yourself with. It's the time on social media that you waste, or the time that you spend binge watching Netflix, or time that you spend with the wrong people because they have a negative influence on you. Taking drugs, smoking too much, anything that's not healthy. Because I never met anyone who said, I want to live to 50 and then die.
Yeah.
With cancer. I only meet people that tell me, I want to live a long and happy and healthy life. And then I ask myself why so many people behave completely differently. It's because there is this value gap between what they think they value and what they truly value. So I help them figure out who they are as human beings and connect it to their business. And that unleashes tremendous energy, because all of a sudden you get it, because it's built on your desires, on your values. It's not me coming in with a cookie cutter approach telling you, don't be on Facebook or build an affiliate program or God knows what, These are all tactics. It's about doing the deep work And that is very, very rewarding.
And it's also very powerful. Something in line with that is when you find the why underneath a lot of these things, it takes those entrepreneurs who are being controlled by their business and starting to regain control of the business. So it's working for them rather than them constantly working for it, which is amazing.
And we need to understand that there is a layer beyond the why. The why, people have been talking about the why and your purpose for 20 years. It's just an intention. Unless you take that intention and put it into action, it's just an intent. It's not tangible. It's nothing that you see in your life. And I have actually met people that have an idea about their purpose. And when I ask them, how do you bring it to life? What's the impact that you're creating? They get silent because they realize that in an ideal world, that's what they would love to see, but they actually haven't figured out a way to create the impact. So there are a lot of companies that have shiny purpose statements that are nothing but a fancy veneer wrapped around a less noble core. They are purpose washing and not really creating the impact that they want people to believe they create.
So let's say figuring out why I'm doing the things I'm doing, I'm figuring out that under layer. What would you say when somebody finds themselves having a business model that turns a profit, they're doing okay, but they really don't have a true impact or even like a idea of where they would want to make an impact? How do you find your people that you can actually influence and change and make something good in this world?
A business is just a vehicle. It is a vehicle to make money. It is a vehicle to create an impact. It is a vehicle, and you can change vehicles. You can sell vehicles. You can buy a new one. You can build your own. It's not difficult. Once we realize that it's just a vehicle, we can let go of it. And when you spend all your passion, all your energy on something that you are not emotionally aligned with, that is a sad, sad life.
Yeah.
We work so much as business owners and as entrepreneurs. We spend our attention, our emotions, our money, we pour everything into these businesses. And when we realize that we're not deeply invested because it doesn't align with who we are, let go of it. It will just lead to a damn miserable life. And the moment you realize that, and that you can start over, that you can start something that is fully aligned with who you are, that's like being born for the second time, or maybe the third time, depending on how often you've done it. So
Yeah.
That's what I would suggest.
I got a question around mindset because I think we're touching on it. As someone who has and does advise a wide range of companies, we're talking from solopreneurs to Fortune 50 companies, some of the largest in the world, outside of bureaucracy and the layers that big companies have to go through to make changes, what delineates the mindset of a smaller business from a larger company in regards to their strategy? What do you typically see?
Took me a moment to understand the question properly because it's actually a really good question. Let's go to the extremes. Some of the biggest companies I work with and some of the smallest ones. And if we put them side by side, the structure and the process that I use with these businesses to help them distill the essence out of what they want to do, which then in the end some call a strategy, is literally the same. There is no difference. I ask a Fortune 50 CEO the same question that I ask a solopreneur, because the human being behind that has the same desires and dreams and wishes. In the end, we're human after all. So what drives us is more or less the same. We have similar regrets. We have similar hopes and dreams. So structure, bureaucracy, and processes aside, I have the joy of dealing with human beings. And sometimes that's all that matters. And when you help someone being seen as a human being, all of a sudden the conversation shifts from money to our deep desires and how we use the businesses we own to help us achieve these desires. So I don't think there is a huge difference between big and small businesses. It's often more about speed. So a small business can just say, okay, Alex, we've created that new strategy. From tomorrow on, I hit the button and I cut out everything that doesn't matter and I focus fully on what I want to do. Bigger businesses are a bit more like big oil tankers. They need some time to change direction, whereas smaller businesses can pivot very quickly.
How do you see leadership play a part into this strategy process? Because I imagine in some of the larger companies, they got to get some buy-in. They're having 1,000 employees be like, you know what, we're cutting this thing out. We need to have you all in. I think on a small scale too, there's leadership involved as well. So how do you see it play into?
Leadership is sort of there are specific aspects of leadership that play an incredibly important role when it comes to bringing a strategy to life in a business. In larger businesses, especially the people that sit somewhere in the middle, that lead somewhere in the middle, they have maybe 2 or 3 layers above them and maybe another 2 layers below them. They are super critical in understanding the strategy and helping their teams define how they contribute, for example. If you neglect that aspect, your strategy will just stall. You sit there and you're like, we defined it, it's solid, we rolled it out, big town hall, everyone nodded, we got the applause, we followed up with an email, we hung up some posters. Why is nothing happening? Yeah, that's just not how it happens. It's like really creating the environment where people feel empowered and enabled to implement strategy. That means they need to have permission to take decisions that are in line with a new strategy. For example, they reallocate their department's resources and take them away from projects that apparently are not supporting the new strategy and focus them on what does. And they need to be enabled, which means they need to have the skills, for example, to hold a strategic dialogue with their teams without having to fear looking stupid because they don't have all the answers. But you need to know how to run a dialogue like that, how to mine for agreement and for disagreement and ideas, and how to deal with what's coming your way. And leadership is sort of the catalyst that an organization needs in order to implement strategy. In a small business, that's just so much easier because it's maybe a handful of people or maybe 50 people. You can just talk to them individually. Some of the bigger organizations I work with, we're talking about thousands of people. It's just not that easy.
They're email blasting 1,000 people rather than just walking down the hall and be like, hey, we're going to do this from now on. Are you ready for that?
Yeah.
Big difference. Tell me if this is true. I have a moment in your life and possibly something that has impacted your career. Your dad was let go in his 50s from a larger corporation due to layoffs. And I'm curious how this is played into how you approach companies that are either trying to restructure or you're trying to help them do prevention. How did that circumstance motivate you in how you do business working with these companies?
That's actually true. It was very difficult for my family to see what it did to my father in his late 50s. Like emotionally, it was a hard time for him. I personally had a similar experience when I worked for a large organization where I helped restructure one of their business divisions. And I saw what it did to people. So it's probably one of my biggest underlying motivator to do the work that I do, because I want to help companies to avoid having to let go people to large degrees. There is always a certain turnover, which is absolutely fine. But if you see mass redundancies happening and plants being shut down because management missed the mark over years to create a path into a prosperous future, it's often not management that pays the bill. It's not the leaders that pay the bill. It's the workers. It's the people that follow and not those who lead. And the biggest motivator for me is when I see that businesses grow because of the strategy we create. And that doesn't necessarily mean we have to triple or double. It just means you see that they grow into a new part, that they add a new business line, that they understand that they can influence the future of their industry, that they invest in research and development, for example. There are a lot of different things that companies do as a result of a future-proof strategy. And in the end, it sometimes also means to reallocate resources. That it sometimes means that you close facilities and use the funds to reinvest them. And that's just normal business. But it's something entirely different than realizing that you messed up and need to fire half of your workforce because of that. So I guess for me, strategy is a vehicle to create, not only as a leader, as an individual or as a business owner, but actually as an organization, a legacy that you can be proud of as someone being involved in it.
And the being able to provide opportunities that are ongoing and, like you said, keeping jobs intact without having to make the mistakes down the road,
Yeah.
Real prevention. Let's say I'm an entrepreneur and it's opposite day. I want my business strategy to suck. I want it to be terrible. I want it to be the worst business strategy in the world. What would I have to do to ensure I have a terrible business strategy?
Other than not talking about it at all, which is one of the biggest mistakes. You strategize and then don't tell anyone and expect magically things to happen.
Yeah.
Other than that, I would say make it short term. Or like really only look to the next 12 months. That's not really strategic. That's very operational and tactical. That is probably one of the biggest mistakes. Another mistake is that and this is a mistake that I see very often, companies creating a strategy that doesn't even deserve the name. What they create is a business continuity plan or an operational excellence plan. It basically means we're doing the same as we always done, but this time we do it right. Harder, better, faster, stronger. It basically means it's just an idiot. Because that's the signal you're sending into the organization is like, apparently we're not able to change and transform our business. And there is constant change and transformation needed in these days. I don't want to add to the cliche that we've never had a faster speed of transformation and change in the world. I don't know whether that's true or not. What I do know, however, is that just being a business owner and taking a look at the environment I'm operating in, there are constantly new requirements coming my way. So as a business, if I stop learning, if I stop adjusting, if I stop thinking about how I can serve my clients in a better way, someone else will. Short-term operational business continuity plans, those are probably the biggest issues.
Gotcha. I'll keep that in mind if I ever want my business strategy to be terrible. I have those right in my back pocket. Something that comes up that I want some definition on is tactics and strategy. Because I think, at least from this conversation, I probably fall into this. I think I'm making a strategy when I'm really making a tactic. What's the difference between a tactic and a strategy? And how can I know that I'm not going all in on a tactic that should have been a strategy?
A strategy is a framework against which you benchmark opportunities and decisions. That's what a strategy is. It helps you make decisions. It helps you allocate resources because you know the handful of priorities that I have are 1, 2, 3, and 4. And not 6, 7, or 8. But how you bring these priorities to life, that is operational work. So at some point, we stop strategizing. We filled all our templates. We know our vision. We know the strategic KPIs. We know which priorities will push those KPIs into the right direction and therefore help us reach the vision. We've mapped out what we do. We assessed our current projects and our ideas and benchmark them against our priorities and see where they fit in. At some point in time, we take them and operationalize them, which means we take those strategic goals and break them down into individual targets. And then we know how we contribute within the work, the operational work that we do. So linking strategy to action is one of the biggest tasks for leaders in an organization, or for a business owner, for that matter. And that is when strategy turns into tactics. So tactics play into strategies. So of course you can say, I have a sales strategy. Of course you can do that. But in the end, what you have is tactics. It's how you approach a negotiation, for example. That's tactics. When you decide on which sales channels you use, these are more strategic decisions. But the term strategy and tactics is being thrown. I stopped the war against confusing these terms. It's just no use.
So it sounds like strategy might be the umbrella and the tactics are the actionable items beneath it that make the strategy come to life. Is that a good way of looking at it?
Perfect definition.
Nice. We're going to switch gears here. I got a question for you about this. You had a career shift in being a music journalist and DJ, and then you made your switch into marketing and business. What type of music were you playing as a DJ? What type of gigs were you working with, Alex?
I think it just describes me as a person very well. So I did those techno nights in helicopter hangars, and at the same time I was a resident in a rock and metal discotheque. So I approached music always with a very, very open and curious mind. There's even good country music out there. Every type of music has its gems. So a typical day for me has some 90s hip hop, a bit of country music or new country, it definitely has a ton of post-hardcore and stuff like that. Music is such a kaleidoscope. It's amazing.
It is amazing. You're making mixes yourself. You're bringing your own mixes to these gigs. What's a memory you have from being a DJ?
Oh my God, there's so many. I mean, I've done that for a decade and in so many different settings. I think some of the best nights I had as a resident DJ in that rock club in my early mid-20s, those were some of the really memorable moments when you have 800, 1,000 people in the club at like 2 or 3 a.m. You reach the climax and everybody's just gloriously happy with the music and everyone's smiling. And you take a look around and like, this is pretty cool, eh?
Yeah. That's awesome. To be able to create those environments where people are having fun, that's super cool.
Absolutely.
Alex, we're moving on to the final question of the podcast. But before we do, I want to acknowledge you for all that you're doing, helping businesses, large and small, find their strategy and have clarity around what they actually want to have happen in their businesses. And something that you said in another podcast I listened to that I really thought was cool is you take this weird business jargon and terminology and you're able to break it down into understandable steps and lingo that day-to-day people can understand. And I think that makes the difference in the results that people get because people are able to understand it. I also want to acknowledge you for the heart you have for helping people and pushing them toward their goals. So appreciate all that you're doing.
Thank you very much, Nicholas. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. The final question of the podcast is, what does it mean to live a fulfilling life?
This is a very difficult question, and I think it's impossible to answer in a generic way. I think everyone has their own answer to what it means for them to live a fulfilled life. I mean, I'm in my mid-40s now. I see that a fulfilled life meant something different to me 10 years ago and 20 years ago. And it will definitely mean something different 10 years from now. Right now, my life is super boring by the standard of many people, but it's what I consider a fulfilled life. I spend every waking hour that I don't spend with work, I spend it with my family, especially with my 2.5-year-old, because seeing him grow up is such a pleasure for me because it wasn't planned that way. When he was born, 2 months before COVID broke, I was traveling a lot. I was working everywhere in the world. There were these mornings when you wake up and you're not sure whether you're still in Bangkok or already in Toronto. It was really, really weird. And I realized that it was not sustainable. COVID and my son, because it more or less happened at the same time, completely changed what I see as a fulfilling life. So right now, can't be boring enough for me. The less I am outside chasing some shiny object, the more I spend time with my family, the better.
I love that. Alex, where can people connect with you on the internet? You have a bunch of great resources on your website. Don't mean to jump the gun on it. I hope people check that out there. But where can people connect with you on the internet?
Easiest, obviously, on my website or on LinkedIn. Easiest is on my website, alexthestrategist.com or Alex Brueckmann. If you dare to write my name, alexbrueckmann.com. So alexthestrategist.com is the easiest way. There is a tab on my website that's called Resources, where you can find all kinds of things, free trainings, articles. You can join my email community, which is delivering and exploring topics left and right from strategy, leadership, and entrepreneurship and how they connect to what we do. You can just hop on a call with me if you like, and we can chat about what strategy means for you. I love geeking out about it.
There you have it. All of those links will be in the show notes. Go say hi to Alex, schedule a call with him, chop it up with him. Alex, thanks for being on the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
That was the episode. You just listened to it. Uploads every Friday at 6 a.m. Bet you didn't see Alex being a DJ coming. Not a chance. A curveball we love. Thank you for being here. There is a Discord link in the show notes, as well as a link to meet one-on-one with me via phone call. So if you're a listener of the show, I'd love to get to know you. Stay diligent and dedicated, friends. I'll see you next week.